Hello, everyone. I'm Cassandra. I'm the founder of Heal Anxious Attachment, the Hub. And we have Janelle here with us, a somatic relationship coach who specializes in helping women break free from anxious attachment patterns and finding lasting security in love. As a trauma-informed somatic coach with the Embody Lab and certified breathwork facilitator with Alchemy of Breath, Janelle brings both clinical expertise and embodied healing practices to her work. Over the past 6 years, Janelle has guided individuals, groups, and retreat participants through transformative coaching and breathwork experiences across some of the world's most beautiful destinations. From Bali and Thailand to Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal, her approach helps people move beyond reactive patterns and into the secure, connected relationships they've always desired. So today we'll be talking about how to move from conflict to connection and interrupt the anxious avoidant dance that keeps so many couples stuck in cycles of pursuit and withdrawal. She will also share practical tools for creating the safety and connection we all crave in our relationships. Welcome, Janelle. So beautiful to have you here.
Thanks, Cassandra. Really happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's begin. Janelle, from the outside, people might not expect that you struggled in relationships. Tell us what was really happening behind closed doors.
So I've had quite a bit of a journey to feel secure in relationships. And of course, it's an ongoing journey. I still struggle with anxious attachment patterns in relationships. And this shows up a lot in the way that I have experienced conflict with my current partner. I'm currently in a 2-year relationship. About 3.5 years ago, I went through a really painful breakup where I was constantly stuck in these conflict cycles. We were having really painful, toxic fights, fighting every day, a lot of yelling. And it was exhausting. It was emotionally exhausting, draining my energy for everything in my life, being stuck in these kinds of fights. And going through that breakup was really painful. So, yeah, after I went through that breakup, I started doing therapy, emotional focus therapy, and somatic therapy, and really understanding my attachment style, understanding how my anxious attachment style was creating these kinds of conflicts, and being able to feel more empowered by having that self-awareness to feel more empowered to break out of these conflict cycles and learn how to self-soothe and co-regulate and break through these conflict patterns. So in my current relationship that I've been in for the past 2 years, I really see a shift. Like, we still have conflict, but I really see a shift in my ability to navigate that without it going off the rails, so to speak. But it's been really helpful to have this awareness and use these tools to break through that conflict.
Yeah, I hear you. I think many listeners can relate. So, what is underneath these conflict cycles? Why do you think this was coming up?
hmm Yeah. So, um, well, before I didn't really know why it was coming up. And I think for so many couples in fights, like, we don't really know why we're having the fight, or we think it's about something on the surface, like, oh, we're fighting about our jobs or our life goals or our work or the dishes or the dog or something really simple. But it's actually usually about something much deeper underneath. And becoming aware of my attachment style really gave me that insight into see, okay, like, what's going on under the surface? What are the deeper emotional wounds and needs that are being that are unmet? And having that awareness of our attachment style really helps us to see what's actually going on under the surface. So for myself, as someone that's more anxiously attached, one of the common wounds that comes up is fear of abandonment, feeling unseen or unheard, feeling like I don't matter. These kinds of wounds often are the ones that are triggered, that are creating these conflicts in my relationship.
Mhm. So, essentially, we'll engage in conflict because we have an unmet need. Right? And is it that instead of expressing that need vulnerably, then we might lash out or, yeah, just try and get those needs met in a more abrupt or aggressive way. Is that right? Because we're in a triggered state.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Do you say there's some antidote to this, or do you have a tool that listeners can apply? How do you navigate this cycle?
Yeah. I definitely have some tools I would love to share with you today. Maybe first I'll just explain a little bit about the cycle just so there's more awareness of what's going on in the cycle, because I've found that just that awareness itself is, in a sense, a tool, because it helps us move from me versus my partner to us versus the cycle, or us versus the problem. And just that awareness alone is huge for being able to break out of this. Um, so, the cycle, as I've learned it and share it, is from Sue Johnson, who's the creator of emotional focus therapy. Um, and she created this cycle, and it's like a figure eight cycle, and she calls it the pursue withdraw dynamic. She also calls it the protest polka. My partner and I have renamed it for ourselves the stormy spiral. So, yeah, you might, if you're in a couple, just kind of look at the patterns of your relationship and name it. That's kind of a fun way to remove the intensity from it and just kind of like have a sense of humor about, okay, like we're doing that thing again. It breaks you out of that cycle. But yeah, the way the cycle works, as you already touched on a little bit, is often as an anxious attachment style, we have a need or a desire or a concern. And instead of bringing that up from a regulated state, we might bring it up from an anxious state in a way that comes across as critical or blaming or attacking to our partner. Um, like, you always this, you never that kind of phrases, for example. Um, and then the avoidant partner will react by becoming defensive or maybe dismissive, saying, "Oh, you're making a big deal out of this. It's not such a big deal. Why are you ruining our night?" or something like this. And then the anxious partner will feel invalidated and will start to maybe raise their voice to, or just escalate, raising their voice to be seen because they're feeling dismissed and invalidated. They want to be seen and heard, so they start raising their voice. And then the avoidant partner will withdraw and maybe go away, leave the room, close the door. And then the anxious partner will follow them, maybe like knocking on the door, let me in, because they feel abandoned. And then the avoidant partner will maybe shut down, even stonewall, go away for a day or more. So this is this cycle, and you can see that along this cycle, each person is triggering the other person, is triggering the other person, is triggering the other person. It just continues in this spiral until one person is able to have the awareness to step out of that cycle and to stop it from continuing to escalate. So each person can do that at any point along the cycle. And I have some tools that I can share with you of how to do that. But the first step is just to recognize, okay, we're in this cycle. It's not me or him, it's both of us like contributing to this cycle at each point along the way.
Yeah, and that it's our inner children, right, that are just reacting. And I like that you have a name for it, the stormy spiral, that makes it a bit more playful, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a good point. It is our inner children, right? And I think this is such an important point because I carried so much shame for so many years. Like, oh, like why am I yelling like this? Like, I'm usually a very calm person. Like, why do I act like this? Something's wrong with me. I'm broken. And becoming aware that this is my inner child, like trying, to be seen and heard, I could have a lot more compassion for myself and not carry that kind of same shame. um, and yeah, our attachment style, our anxious attachment is just a strategy. Like, it's a strategy to try to connect. Like, we're all wired for connection. It's a human need to have connection at some point along the way, many points along the way in our life from our childhood till now. We've been hurt, and we develop these protective strategies to try to protect ourselves from being hurt again. So there's nothing shameful or wrong or broken or bad about these strategies or behaviors. It's just they're not effective. And so by having compassion and understanding the reason we're acting this way, we can start to shift our behaviors to be more effective, basically.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also, seeing that our partners are reacting from that wounded place of their inner child is just like, hey, I want connection. I want you to see
Mhm.
me. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. And if we also view our partners in that way, it can help to cultivate more compassion there and more understanding. And yeah, and then if there's that mutual understanding, we can both heal together.
Mhm.
Um, so I
Exactly.
love that. And yeah, you mentioned the first step is really cultivating that awareness of the pattern.
Mhm.
And then do you have certain tools that we can, that, listeners can use to actually work through the conflict, diffuse it? Um,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so I have a methodology that I call GROW, and I like this methodology because I really think of a relationship like a garden. My partner and I talk about our relationship like it's a garden, and it's something that needs to be nurtured and watered, and to grow a relationship that feels secure and healthy. It's not something that we just find our soulmate or the perfect person and then it's happily ever after, like society often tells us. It's actually a work, and it's meaningful work and use and important work, and it's worth it. But it does take some work. So that's why I use this methodology that I call GROW. And the first step is, as you've already said, awareness. So I call it gentle awareness. This is where we move from blaming our partner or shaming ourselves, judging ourselves and each other, into curiosity and compassion and trying to understand, okay, why are they reacting like that? What hurt is coming up in them? Why am I reacting like this? What hurt or need is coming up in me? And starting with that kind of curiosity and compassion and awareness for ourselves and each other as the first step. And understanding this anxious avoidance cycle is a big part of that awareness. So that's the first step. Um, and then the second step is regulating your nervous system. So when we get into this anxious avoidant cycle or spiral, we're not going to argue our way out of it. We can't we're not in our rational brains at that point. We are in like a fight or flight or freeze response. And the solution is a somatic one. So, as a somatic coach, I really work with somatic tools to regulate the nervous system to break through conflict. And in this case, some very simple ones that I use in conflict is first and foremost to pause, to breathe, touch. You can put a hand on your heart, like, take a breath. Maybe sometimes you need a more extended somatic response. You might need to go for a walk. Um, but yeah, something physical, whether it's a pause, a breath, a touch, a walk. This is always the most effective response to break out of this fight or flight dynamic and
mhm.
anxious avoidant conflict is first and foremost a body based tool to stop that dynamic from escalating.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, sometimes I also tell my clients to just take a time out. If they're
Absolutely.
in that like triggered state, you're not going to have a constructive conversation, right? You're not, your
Mhm.
rational mind is not working. You're maybe, yeah, in this ego state. And so trying to sort out conflict, I think, while we're triggered is the worst idea. Am I
Mhm.
right?
Exactly. Yeah, I love that word of timeout because again, it brings it back to like, okay, we're in our child selves right now. Our child
Mhm.
selves need a timeout. I know another coach calls it like getting out of the sandbox. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you have to take a pause, take a timeout. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just have maybe a time where you'll come back and continue the conversation, right? And be like, okay, give me 1 hour, give me 1 day.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe the one of the partners can actually set a time limit, which I think also helps for especially for the nervous system of the anxiously attached, knowing
Abs-
that, okay, we're gonna reconvene. They're not
abs-
leaving me, they're not abandoning me. Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Beautiful. And then so yeah, we have that like somatic approach, like a breath, we pause, maybe we take the time out. And then what? What's the
Hmm.
next step?
Yeah, so somatic first, always. The next step is open communication. So, again, through the GROW method, we have gentle awareness, regulated nervous system, and then the third O is open communication. So, again, as you mentioned before, this can only happen when our nervous system is regulated. So, in some cases, this might take 30 minutes, it might take 1 hour, it might take a day until the next day. But as you said, just to set that timing is very useful, especially for the anxious avoidant, just to know, okay, we are going to come back again. And I can self soothe until we can come back and have a regulated conversation about this. So there's many tools in terms of open communication. A very simple one is using I statements and speaking from your vulnerable self. So speaking into the emotion that's happening under the surface. So with the anxious avoidant cycle, I can also share a visual of this when we release this for listeners because it's really helpful to see. So what I described of the anxious avoidant dynamic. On the surface, there's these protective patterns for the anxious partner, criticizing, blaming, protesting, the avoidant partner withdrawing, being defensive, being dismissive. This is what we see happening on the surface. But what's really going on under the surface are some very vulnerable emotions happening for the anxious partner, a fear of being abandoned, a fear of, I can't trust this person, kind of fears coming up. And for the avoidant partner, often a fear of not being enough, of being inadequate. So when we can start to see those vulnerable emotions underneath and actually speak into those, this is a really effective method for diffusing conflict and for starting to have open communication just by using I statements and speaking into your vulnerable emotions. So maybe coming back and saying, I was feeling unheard. I was feeling like I'm not enough. These kinds of statements can be really helpful for starting to bridge the gap again, just by speaking into your own vulnerable emotions first.
Yeah, I love that. So owning our experience instead of projecting it onto the other, right? So instead of saying, you make me feel, just
Yeah.
owning that and like, yeah, what I'm feeling right now is.
Mhm.
Mhm. I also love the phrase, the story I'm telling myself is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because often we get caught in these loops
Mhm.
of projection, or we have like limiting beliefs just playing out,
Mhm.
and we make
Mhm.
certain assumptions about why our
Yes.
partners are doing certain things, and we
Mhm.
personalize things, and often it's not
Mhm.
about us. Normally it's not
Yes.
about us.
Yeah. Yeah, I love
Mm.
that. Another one I like to use is like a part of me felt or a part of me feels because we don't have to overly identify with these things, but it's a part of us and it's a vulnerable part of us, a childlike part of us that we've said before. So the little child in me was feeling scared, or a part of me was feeling scared, a part of me was
Mhm.
um, this can also be a really good way to get into that vulnerability as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then would the next step be to make a request, like a vulnerable request of what is it we actually need?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good framework. Like I said, there's many tools here for this. One is nonviolent communication. I like to use as a helpful one, and this is the framework for that. Like when this happened, I felt this. I need this.
Hmm.
So yeah, the next step can be making a request. Um, and just using clear and direct language with that, not again, not blaming, not criticizing. But I felt scared. I need communication. Maybe I can give a specific example actually from a recent conflict my partner and I had, just so you can see how each of these pieces kind of
Hmm.
play out. Um, so, for example, recently my partner and I had agreed to go to a Pilates class in the morning, and I came downstairs ready to go, and my partner was said to me like, "I don't want to go to that class. I'll just go to the gym with you and go on the treadmill. You can go to the class." And I could feel like my heart beating, like this kind of like already somatic response of like, okay, like I'm feeling uncomfortable, my heart's beating, and my face looked a certain way. And then he was like, well, if you're going to get upset, then I guess I'll just go, which is kind of like a little bit like appeasing and like dismissive, like kind of response as the avoidant. And then I got more activated and like the anxious response and was feeling kind of dismissed. And I was like, well, you're not keeping your commitment to me. And then he was kind of defensive and like, yes, I am. I'm still going to the gym with you. I'm just not doing the class. It's not a big deal. A little dismissive again. And then I escalate more and I'm like, well, you didn't keep XYZ commitments to me. I start to like raise my voice, speaking faster. And then finally he had the awareness, as I mentioned before, like one person has to have the awareness that this escalation is starting to happen. Had the awareness to see that first and just held me, was like, here, let me hold you.
Yeah.
And again, and that just diffused everything. I stopped raising my voice as we stopped arguing, like, and it was like, just stop. Um, so yeah, for me, this is a really beautiful example of why the somatic solution works the best because we could have tried to keep arguing, like who was right
Mhm.
or wrong, like was he breaking his commitment or not, and it would have not gone anywhere. But having that awareness, okay, like we're triggered, let's break out of this trigger by using touch, by using a pause, by taking a breathe together, um, stopped it. So yeah, so that was a beautiful, beautiful example for me. And we take turns, which is really nice. Like sometimes he recognizes it first and says the pause. Sometimes I recognizes it first and take the pause. Um, but yeah, I can self-soothe. Sometimes I recognize, oh, I'm starting to yell. Like, okay, like hand on
Mhm.
heart, breathe. Okay, now I can calm down and talk again. Sometimes he
Yeah.
recognizes it first, but we take turns. Yeah.
I love that. So basically, also just doing something that will interrupt the pattern, right? So in this case, he
Mhm.
held you, or yeah, it could be something else like the timeout or something. I
Mhm.
don't know, with more humor, or it depends. I guess you just
Yeah.
need that awareness because often when we're in the triggered state, we're not thinking
No.
logically, right? We're just like,
Yeah.
I'm not feeling seen, I'm not feeling heard. They need, I'm right, they're wrong. And we're
Yeah.
often in this, yeah,
Mhm.
conflict state. So we don't even think to interrupt it. So it takes some
Mhm.
practice, right?
It takes so much practice. It takes
Mhm.
so much practice. And yeah, I mean, even by sharing that story, I just want to show that like how much practice it does take because I've been aware of this and working on this for many years now. And as you can see in that story, I'm still the one kind of escalating. So it takes a lot of practice and I'm definitely getting better, but yeah, it takes practice. And I love what you brought up about humor as well. I've also heard of a strategy of like couples just saying pause on the floor. And then whenever this happens, they just go on the floor and then
Yeah.
they start laughing because like it's kind of like stop, drop, and roll, like emergency response. So yeah, any kind of like just like somatic or humor or some kind of something to interrupt the cycle. For
Mhm.
me, like physical touch is like gold. Like, yeah, that always interrupts the cycle for me.
I saw
Um,
this other video where the couple will have to like their noses should be touching and
yeah.
they have to have the fight like that.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah. So, yeah, certain tricks like this really help. And then, when we're doing that, we're like, actually, it doesn't matter. Right.
Mhm,
And I think it's
mhm,
also coming back to the realization that, it's not about me being right or them being
mhm,
right. It's like
mhm.
we are a team. And how
Yeah,
can we, yeah, just get on the same page again so that,
exactly.
yeah, we're both right. We're both
Mhm.
thriving, right? It's not about, sides or who's right or wrong, but how can we
Yeah,
flourish together? Mhm.
exactly, and that's why I think this cycle explanation was such a game changer for me because we were always getting in fights where it's like, "You started it," or, you know, "You triggered me, I was just reacting," but the cycle really shows, like, each person is, like, triggering the other person along this it's an
Yeah.
infinite.
Mhm.
No one's
Mhm.
right or wrong, villain or victim. It's like we're just stuck in this cycle. And until we can acknowledge that no one's right or wrong, we're just in this cycle. We're just going to be stuck in it. But when we can see that cycle, then we can say, okay, like it's not me versus you. It's just us versus the cycle. We're a team. We
Yeah,
can work together to get out of this. That's such an important insight. Yeah. Mhm.
exactly, 100%.
Mhm.
And maybe also another step, so if, yeah, people listening wanna go one step deeper, it
Mhm.
might be also useful to reflect on why you got triggered, right? So in
Exactly.
your case, it's a Pilates class,
Mhm.
what's underneath that? It's not really about the class itself, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is such an important point. And again, you'll see in the visual of the dynamic, we talk about what we're doing on the surface, what's going on under the surface. So, under the
Mhm.
surface for me here, the surface, we see the Pilates class. What's happening under the surface is I'm feeling like I'm abandoned in a sense. Like I was trusting my partner to spend this time with me, and now he's kind of like not going to be there. And I feel a little bit abandoned. I feel yeah, like sad and lonely and wanting closeness with him. And that's a valid need to want to feel close to your partner, to want
Mhm.
you can depend on them to be there for you when they say they're going to be there. So yeah, I could see that that was my feeling and need underneath, and that was valid, and validate that for myself. And for him, also his underlying feeling and need is like, I want to feel free. I want to feel like I can, make my choices and be spontaneous. And if I decide I don't want to do this class, I can do a different one. And that's a valid need too. It's also valid to want to have some spontaneity and freedom to change our mind at certain points. So, yeah, seeing what was going on under the surface in this situation was really helpful as well. Yeah. Mm.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you had to use the story I'm telling myself, what would that sound like? So if you would communicate to your partner and be like, "Okay, I'm feeling triggered right now about the class. The story I'm telling myself is."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So the story I'm telling myself is, you're not there for me. I can't rely on you. You're always breaking your commitments to me.
And then often when we say it out loud, especially if we're in a relatively healthy relationship, we might be like, actually, this is not true, right? And we
Mhm.
see, we can even start to detect the thinking errors, right? Or the limiting beliefs surfacing.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe there is a pattern in the relationship of our partners not sticking to their commitments. And then
Mhm.
that is something that would need to be addressed, right?
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. So again, I think in this framework, we can kind of come back to the once our nervous system is regulated. First, we have this gentle awareness, this pattern. Then we have a regulated nervous system where we can break out of this fight flight response and these stories. Um, then we can have a calm, regulated conversation about what our needs are, what our
Mhm.
requests are. And this is the third step of the open communication. So, for example, in this story I gave of the recent conflict I had with my partner, once we were regulated after the class, he ended up going to the class with me. After the class, we had a conversation, and I just said, I was feeling triggered because I felt that uh, I really want to spend time with you. Want us to keep a commitment to these routines of going to the gym together in the morning. Um, and he what communicated to me, like, I understand that that's what you want, and I also feel like I want to be able to change my mind and to do different classes. And so we were both able to speak into like what our needs were and make requests to one another, and make an agreement together of how I remember saying, like, okay, like, how how many classes do you want to do together this week? Like, how many days a week do you want to, like, choose to just do your own class? And then we kind of just made an agreement of like, okay, like 2 days a week we're going to do a class together, and then the other days we'll just do our own thing. That way we can kind of have an agreement and alignment that honors both of our needs, because my need is valid to have that time together, and his need is valid to have some freedom and spaciousness. So yeah, that's the third step is coming to an agreement of something that honors both of your needs. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, just meeting in the middle, right?
Mm.
Mhm. And also, I noticed when, yeah, you were describing the conversation you had, that there was also like a mirroring or like a validation of like, hey, I understand, what you're going through, or just sort of like summarizing what the other person told you. Like, um, yeah, this is like a practice rooted in authentic relating, right?
Mhm.
Where, when somebody's expressing, what's wrong or why they feel triggered, that the person on the receiving end can just summarize what they heard, and that really helps them yeah, have a more like calm and constructive conversation, I think.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is such an important one, especially for the anxious attached person. For myself, it's so important to feel seen and heard and validated. This is one of my like core wounds. I think it's one of the core wounds of the anxious attached, is to feel like they don't matter, like they don't have a voice. And so it's so important for the avoidant partner to recognize that wound and that need, and to be able uh, to validate. And this is such a useful practice, just to say, I hear you saying, I, s-
Mhm.
I understand why you would feel that way. Help me understand, because sometimes we don't understand each other. Sometimes we disagree. We have, different experiences and needs, but just saying, help me understand. And what you feel matters even when I don't understand it. This kind of validation piece is so, so important.
Yeah. And to
Mhm.
help me understand, then it goes back to that curiosity piece,
Mhm.
right? And it's like curiosity that breeds connection.
Exactly.
And so that's so important, right? Like
Mhm.
instead of making, conclusions or assumptions, just be
Mhm.
curious. And I
Exactly.
think that's one of the best like communication tips I've ever received. Just like
Mhm.
maintaining that curiosity. And of course, that can be hard if we're
Mhm.
feeling dismissed or triggered.
Yeah.
And that's like a practice in itself to
Mhm.
maintain that open heart and just be curious, like where are they coming from?
Yeah.
What do they need?
Mhm.
And trying to really put ourselves in the other person's shoes, right?
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. I think, yeah, and if we can do that and give each other space to be heard, then it's easier to be curious about the other person if the other person is curious about you. So this is
Hmm.
another technique or tool that we use. Is like a repair process. There's many different repair processes you can use. There's one we use from the Gottmans. They have a really good book called Fight Right. And they have a repair process where there's basically 4 steps, and you just take a moment to go through each step. It's the first step is talking about what happened from your perspective. The second step is to say what wound it triggered in you, how it made you feel. The third step is taking ownership for your part. And then the fourth step is saying what you want to do differently next time. So through this
Hmm.
process, you both have a chance to get curious about what was the other person feeling, to express for yourself what were you feeling, and for them to hear you. You both get to be seen and heard, and no one has to be right or wrong. Just
Yes.
have a chance to understand each other, and yeah, then take ownership for your part and make a commitment for what you want to do differently next time. So the repair process is very important after you have a conflict, and this is a really good tool
Hmm.
to use.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that this is actually the factor that deems like how successful a relationship will be or how long it will last. It's
Oh.
not like if couples fight or not, like fighting or being in conflict is actually normal, but it's like how good are we at repairing?
Yes, it's so
Hmm.
true. And Gottmans, who I just mentioned, did research on this actually and showed that couples who fight actually have really good outcomes. Like couples who never fight or who never argue actually often have shorter relationships. So conflict is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. If you're never having conflict, it might actually mean that you're not being your authentic self, right? Because
Yes.
like if we're showing up in our full authenticity and expression, of course there's going to be disagreements, there's going to be misunderstandings, we're going to butt heads. This is normal. There's nothing wrong with that. What's important is learning how to fight respectfully and not to do damage to yourself or to your partner or to the relationship. And using these tools of awareness and regulating your nervous system and communicating effectively are really useful for being able to fight right. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so important. And I think, for couples that are conflict avoidant, then you
Mhm.
just end up sweeping things under the rug.
Mhm.
And then there's just this resentment that starts building, right? And at some point, it's going to come out in, probably a big explosive fight.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
yeah, it's not going to be constructive at all.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think some couples might even say, "Oh, we don't fight at all. Our relationship is really good," and so
Mhm.
that shouldn't be the measure, right, of how good a relationship is. But it's more
Mhm.
so, yeah, do I have the space to be my authentic self? Can I express my needs, my desires, or am I just walking on eggshells, which is not
Mhm.
healthy? And
Yeah.
then it's like, again, knowing, I think this is very important for the anxiously attached individual, that it's safe to be in conflict. So it's
Mhm.
safe for me to express my needs. Even
Mhm.
if the other person gets annoyed or frustrated, we can still repair this. We can still come back and be in harmony, even
Mhm.
if they are mad at me or I annoy them, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think what you touched on of safety is just such an important point and such a cornerstone of this work, and why it can be really valuable to work with a coach or to work with a therapist. If you are in a relationship where you're in these constant cycles of conflict where you're fighting all the time, it might not be safe for you to it might not feel safe to bring up your feelings and needs and concerns, or because you've seen over and over in your relationship that every time you do, it spirals into these fights where you end up being
Mhm.
disconnected for a day. You're yelling at each other, you're disconnected for a day, and it's really painful. So you might actually need help to create a safe space to have these conversations. And for me, this was like such a game changer to be in couples therapy, to have a couples coach who could be a neutral observer, who could create a safe space for us to have these conversations without spiraling into these patterns. So if you're stuck in this cycle where you're just always fighting and it's not safe to have these conversations, you might actually need someone to help you learn some of these tools and patterns to be able to fight in a way that's safe, to have conflict in a way that's safe.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. And is that something you offer? You work with couples as well in this context?
Yeah, yeah. This is something I'm really passionate about, is helping couples break out of these cycles, these conflict cycles, using these tools of awareness of the cycle and regulating your nervous system and having open communication. Yeah, this is something I love to work with couples.
And you also work with individuals, is that right?
Yeah, I also work with individuals. So I especially work with women who have anxious attachment, like me, because I've been and I'm still on this journey myself. And I find even if you're in a relationship and your partner doesn't want to work on these things right now, even if you work on your side yourself of being able to understand your reactions and regulate, self soothe for yourself and communicate more effectively, it's going to make a change in your relationship. So I really also work with women just individually, and even if you're single or dating, working with these tools obviously is going to help your dating process, or going through a breakup helps you with that as well. So, really working with your attachment style wherever you are in your relationship journey, from single to dating to in a relationship to going through a breakup, um, having this awareness of your attachment style and being able to self regulate and communicate with that awareness is such a game changer. So, yeah, I work with both single women, dating, in a relationship,
Beautiful.
couples. Uh, mm,
So, yeah, thank you so much, Janelle. This has been amazing. So many golden nuggets here. So, for those of you listening, if you're interested in working with Janelle, she is part of our community of practitioners at the Hub, and I will link her profile here in the description below. And there you can find her website, her social media handles, and you can just reach out to her if you feel like you would like to work with her.
Thanks, Cassandra. It's so wonderful to be a part of this group and to talk with you a little bit about conflict and how to help couples move from conflict to connection. I really love to do this work because it's been such a big part of my own journey, and I love to help other couples and women along this journey. So, thank you for having me be a part of this.
Okay, you're very welcome. Have a
Yeah.
beautiful day.
You too.